morning to you
Good
this
morning,
morning.
Anne.
It's a beautiful day to be alive.
Exactly.
But, not so exciting for a lot of persons. There were protests across Ibadan, many parts of Ibadan, or Ogun State as well, maybe Oshu. Some schools planning to also shut their doors behind us because of that. Children that are still out there. And that's what one of the pleas. For every time we get a chance to speak to the government or people in power, one thing we say is we need the children and their teachers back to where they belong.
Right, and even yesterday, I remember around Songo, UI was a bit, it was a bit blocked yesterday because of the protest. Some persons had to turn back to go and pass through Elele because of the protest, and then you could tell from their faces, and then that they were very intentional and very serious about these people coming back home safely to their parents, basically.
Very important. But let's move on to the conversation for Daybreak gist this morning, and it's about Inec this time around. Right. Inec probes leak of voter data, traces user account. There's something about that story that is making everybody raise brows, that is ruffling feathers, and it's maybe raising dust in a lot of ways. But let's look at what it means, of course, because the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, said they have commenced, said it has commenced yesterday an investigation into allegations of unauthorized access to its continuous voter registration database following the publication of information relating to a candidate in the recent political party primary election in the Federal Capital Territory. And that's about, I think, Emeka EK, of course, and also the person that probably was alleged to have said that was Larry Olayinka, a media aide to the FCT minister. He was saying that, Emeka EK was formerly in another state before moving to, and was showing maybe that was not supposed to be, but according to the statement given by the INEC body, the National Commissioner and Chairman of the Information and Voter Education Committee, particularly, that's Mohammed Haruna, he said the commission was treating the matter with utmost seriousness. In fact, they said they would get to the end of this issue. They even explained that as part of the ongoing CVR exercise, authorized registration officers were granted controlled access to specific components of the registration system to enable them to carry out voter registration transfer requests and update voter records. And so they said such access is actually strictly limited to official duties and is withdrawn once the exercise concludes. So Haruna also disclosed that preliminary findings from the Commission's audit trail had helped identify the user account through which the information was accessed. So that's the conversation to say, how did you get this in this first place? But I know for one, there's this saying in Yoruba parlance or Yoruba climb, they say that if the wall does not have a leak or what we call a crack, then a lizard will not get through. More like if there's no infiltration, if there's no loophole, if there's no leakage in the system, there's no way that information was going to get out to Larry Olayinka in the first, because it does not work with the INEC. And even if it does, it is a confidential material or information that should not be given out. So it's classified based on what the law says. So if you do that, you have contravened a section of the law, you have flouted the rules of the country, and you have flouted maybe the rules of the Electoral Act as well. And so there has to be a prosecution for this. So people are saying that sometimes it's just so scary when you see some, and a lot of people are attracting this or attaching this to the FCT minister to say he wields so much power that even his media aides and every other person working for him are so confident. And so you can see at the face-off with a colonel, at the face-off with a lot of persons, Years on Wiki has been very vocal. It does not give, it does not really back down when he's talking, and it's very, so I think that at a point he even mentioned something about that, raised conversations about press freedom when he was saying they could have shot at somebody who was on the live television, and was saying that because of the comments he made, they could have just, and it became a thing. But I'm not sure anything came out of that, because some requested for a public apology, different human rights
organizations. He later said it was just
but that wasn't an apology, if you ask me, because what he said was just like, well, because he still went on to say that people should not say what, that is not the point. The point is, can you retract your statement? And I'm not sure he retracted. He was just saying that people took it so seriously that it didn't mean it that way. It was just trying to, that the person is actually his friend. I mean, all of those things are unnecessary. Say, I am sorry. I mean, that's not so difficult to say. But anyway, that is now behind us now. So that was one of the reasons why a lot of persons are saying, what effrontery does the FCT minister own, not just have now, own to say a lot of things and do a lot of things. Now, its media aid is also saying something that is not supposed to be said. I wonder why these people are coming out to say, remember the case of El Rufai recently, the case of Fire, and a lot of people are saying that why are people so free to say some things and then they go scot-free for some of the things they say? Because you can't say, or you can't lay claims to having the voter registration information of a particular person that has been transferred. Maybe he transferred from one state to the other. I'm not sure that's within the confines of what your office represents. You should not have that as a data. So if you have it, where did you get it? So I'm looking for INEC. I'm looking for a way INEC would do this, would do justice to this, and probably take this matter so well, and scrutinize and maybe investigate this issue so well that everybody can know that yes, this was actually done by this person, so we can see the people that are culpable. You gave the information to Larry Olayinka. You should not have done this. Then this is the sentence for you. This is what should happen, because there has to be consequence for this. We don't just want this to be swept under the rug, under the carpet any longer. We want real solutions. We want real justice, really, in that sense. Because what happens to... Okay, so he has that of Emeka Ige. What about every other person? So that means some people have this information and they can also use it to their advantage, or they could also sell it out to politicians. And that's why a lot of people are now raising the questions and conversations of trust and distrust in the electoral system in the country. There are certain things that are classified. Let them remain classified. If they should go out for any reason, then whoever does that should bear the brunt of whatever comes out as a consequence. So that conversation is something I'm expecting that the due diligence to, I don't want to say to execute judgment in this sense. Let justice prevail. Whoever gave the data should be called to, I don't know, well, should be responsible for whatever the consequences. And the person that also said it, that he has this information as well, should also face whatever tune he is playing and is dancing to. And so that's one of the conversations right there. But I think of notes for me too is that I'm thinking of a way to rebuild trust, because a lot of persons have lost trust in the system, and not just the INEC now, but in the system generally, because it seems like a systemic failure. Because this same thing that's just happened at the INEC level can happen at another parastatal or MDA of government or ministry or even tiers of government, that you will now think that why is this thing recurrent? So it happened with INEC, it's happening with another person. So we see a lot of info, and so we are asking the questions that, can we build a system or a structure that will make sure that we don't have these leakages, we don't have these infiltrations, we don't have this kind of thing going out if something is classified? And it's all, so I think one of the conversations is because data, how do I put the word now? Like if your data confidentiality, right? That's exactly the word. Data confidentiality is something that should not be joked with for whatsoever reason. If your data as a Nigerian or as any person is given to another person, then there's a chance that there could be a lot of things, there could be a lot of ways that you can be compromised as a person. Your accounts, I mean, maybe your financial account, some of your history and all of these things might be compromised. It has to be within the let's say confines of the people who are maybe investigating or doing something that has to do with your data, not just any other person. So if someone should have my data now, it scares me, because I'm wondering, where did I put the data? Maybe I'll now recall, okay, maybe it's NIN, and that's even an issue now. NIN, BVN, passport, and all of that. So you have a lot of data that is just flying around. So if someone has access to that, the person can, in a way, swindle you. The person can, in a way, maybe tarnish your image and paint you black in society, and a lot of ways that people could be compromised. So what we're saying now is that there should be a no and a very strict and fierce body language of government, of justice to these kind of issues. What Larry Olayinka said, if he was found to have said it, should actually be put to question, and he should answer for the case.
Exactly. So let me take you from that point. I think someone having access to information like that, I mean, it's an aberration, basically. Because ordinarily, you're not supposed to have access to that kind of information. And even ever since then, it's been tweeting like, nothing serious happened, and then it speaks to the systemic failure in the country. Because, I mean, I remember there was a case, I think about last year, where we were discussing the old 50 million naira issue, when the former governor of Ikiti State said Governor Makinde received 50 million naira from the government because of the explosion that happened in Ibadan. And then at some points, there was a little bit of back and forth. Oh, we received 30 million naira, not 50 million naira. And do you know that Fayoshe posted a document online? And then we were asking, how did he get access to that kind of document? So it is that today. And if care is not taken, if INEC cannot put a stop to this, investigate this properly, because I want to believe that Lady Olayinka cannot have access to that kind of information without the help from somebody from the inside.
Definitely.
I mean, so it means that INEC, alongside the security operatives, must work, assiduously to ensure that they fish out the person who leaked that information to Lady Olayinka.
Very true.
Because going back to the issue of Fayose now, Fayose at that time was not even a government official. He was out of government, but he had access to that kind of information. So it speaks to the systemic failure. These people know how they get information, and at the end of the day, people will talk about it and we forget about it. That's just another example. Many more examples of people posting documents online just to verify a particular information, because they just want to let people know that, okay, I'm serious about what I'm saying and I'm very, sincere. So another issue now is talking about, the Royal Council mentioned the fact that, okay, Emeka case from Imo State. Why does he want to contest, in FCT? Another example is Aisha Yusufu. Aisha is from Edo State, but she was interested in FCT. And at the end of the day, she even stepped down because it was obvious she was going to lose that election and she would become the candidate. So Emeka Ike, I think I watched one of his interviews recently, the one he had yesterday on national TV. And he said, yes, he's from Imo State, but the reason why he decided to run, as an aspirant under FCT is because people were calling, they were calling him to come and run. They wanted him to experience, to become a leader and things like that. And people can do it. Even go to universities. When people want somebody to come in, they'll come and meet. Why don't you contest for SUG president? Why don't you contest for departmental president? Things like that. So it's obvious that it's normal for people to come to you to say, can you contest for this thing? We want you to contest. And then if the law allows him, why not? So he decided to contest based on that, and obviously he lost the election. So back to the issue of INEC. Now, last week, we were talking about INEC again, that a particular party, the youth party, took INEC to court because INEC failed to maybe upload certain names on their portal. I don't know, we still have a few months to the election. Why is it that INEC is already having issues like this? First it was about a political party saying you didn't do what you're supposed to do, and then there was a bit of back and forth. You pay lawyers, you do brief, all of these things. And another case now is we are still dealing with INEC, releasing certain documents to certain people who are not supposed to have access to those documents. I wonder what else we are going to discuss about INEC before the general elections. We have an election coming up soon in Osun State, so they should be focused on that. They should be bothered about that. Getting materials down to people. They should be working on certain things that people experienced in the last elections and stopping those things from happening, like the beavers, like other irregularities. Because this election, Nigerians don't want to hear anything like glitches or any inconclusive. We don't want to hear those things, because the reason why another person was as emerged as the INEC chairman is for him to actually follow the issues that we experienced in the last election, not battling with document or no document, not battling with court cases at this point when we have few months to the election. So it's a problem, because at the end of the INEC itself, it looks like there's a bit of pressure, a lot of pressure on INEC, and they have more to do. They have a lot in their hands to do. So I want to believe they already said they're on top of this matter. Even Emeka Ike himself said he's going to investigate this matter, because how can something like that be out there? Because this is not the first time that we are seeing something like this in Nigeria. And if care is not taken, other people might also do the same. As a matter of fact, do you know that anytime we're having elections in Nigeria, I remember the 2023 elections, INEC came out to say that anybody that is found uploading fake results, we have to face the law. So if care is not taken, things like this might even come up during the election period, because people will feel like, if Lady Olayinka can do it and nothing happened, why can't I do it? Because that's what I remember. There was a case when Showore, had a case in court, and when he called the president to some unprintable names, he made reference to the likes of Reno Omokri, who also called the president drug baron. He made reference to other persons who also called the president some unprintable names. So people love to refer to other people who did the same thing and say, when this person said this, what did you do about it? So am I a different person? We are all Nigerians. So we don't want to set that kind of template in Nigeria. Lady Olayinka, an aide to the minister of FCT, has done something that should not even happen at all. And I think we need to investigate this matter. To the letter. Fish out people who actually gave him he cannot have direct access to to that kind of document. That's why I said there must be somebody on the inside, who released that document to him. And so we need to block that loophole, basically, because if we don't block it, I promise you that we'll have more cases like it. It will even be more serious than this one, because, I mean, this is just primaries. Who knows what can happen for the re-election itself? We don't want things like this, and we don't want INEC, be distracted about issues like this. Basically, we should be talking about how we want to get the materials, how we want to work on the network, how we want to work on BVAS, how we want to ensure that the people will come out, en masse to vote on the election, how we want to, mobilize, or let me say, organize, platforms for people to learn on how to vote. Because you know that on election day, some votes become void. Because why? The people don't have the knowledge of how to vote, perfectly, or of how to vote the right way. Some persons will just vote anyhow because they don't have a due knowledge. They don't have what it takes. They don't have the knowledge to vote properly, and so the votes become null and void. So basically, INEC should be focused on that, not on going to court, wasting money. The money that we are still planning. Do you know the budget of this year for the election, the general elections, is high as compared to what we have seen in the past? And of course, the INEC and even the loyalists of this administration have come out to say the reason why the budget is high is because of the inflation in the country. The rate of dollar to naira. Agreed, but then if we are spending that huge amount of money, I mean, we should see the result, and people should not make the same complaint they made in the last election. Basically,
I think you are very spot on for a lot of reasons, and I was trying to look at that information, and I saw that it could have been worse enough or bad enough if Leo Olayinka just mentioned that yeah, he transferred from Imo to FCT, and then even mentioned the dates. He said
May 15.
May 15, that was when he transferred, and that would have been a bad and deplorable situation, except that he took it too far. And then he screenshotted, he had a screenshot, I meant to say, he had a screenshot of 2 pages that would have been on the INEC's administrative login portal that should not be accessible to Lero Olayinka. And so some of the personal information in that screenshot included EK's application number, registration center, voter identification number, profile picture, name, and date of application. And I mean, when I saw the pictures, I was like, okay, so this is a screenshot. This is a portal that you should not even in any way have access to. How did you do this? So whoever did that and screenshot that and sent it to you should also be caught. I mean, like you said, I think I just wanted to reiterate that we have to really check into this issue, because one, if somebody in a political space can just pull out my data, that person can manipulate me ahead of the election to say, we have this number of data and we know you stay here, and we're expecting that you vote for us. So if they can even get my data before voting, what can they not get in that sense? How can they not manipulate people? How can they not canvass people in a very bad way, maybe in some sort of cunning way to entice people to vote for them, and a lot of things. So I'm not seeing anything clear in this thing, except that he has to be taken to court. I'm not seeing any other way that they can address this, except that whoever was complicit to that leaked information should also bear the consequence. I don't know how much Lero Olayinka gave him. I don't know what the relationship they have is. I don't want to care, because basically when you work with some organizations, one of the things they tell you is that confidentiality is serious business. You don't joke with that. And it's just about election now that everybody is already, some persons don't believe Amukiton is the right person, it's the right call.
I mean, several groups have called for his resignation.
You see, so a lot of people still don't trust in the system. It wasn't even just about Amukiton. It was because this system has shown us repeatedly, time and again, that yes, there's been a lot of cases that are not so clear. There's been a lot of malpractices. There's been a lot of power changing hands and some things that are shady in this whole thing. And so, if we are trying to work with, remember the last time before the last election, I think there was no BVAS. BVAS was an upgrade, right? Everybody's looking for, like you mentioned, we should look out for ways we can better conduct elections in the country, because technology has improved, the age has improved, and a lot of people are even saying, why don't we go into maybe voting from the comfort of your room, saying that there should be voters across in the diaspora should be allowed to vote, Nigerians in diaspora should be allowed to vote also from wherever they are, and a lot of development that should come. It should not be a data leak that we should be facing right now. We need certain things that should get us ready ahead of the elections. The elections are fast approaching. INEC should do everything in their power, within their capacity, to ensure that we have a fair, credible, and free election, that every other person in the country would not just vote, but vote the person they want to vote, without any fear or compromise, or without any malpractice involved. And so, if there's anything I'm saying ahead of the elections, I say that if INEC would actually justify the fact that they are truly independent, that they should really have this kind of issues in court and see it to the end, until we get those complicit, and whoever says what should also be responsible for whatever I said.
Right. So just like you mentioned, I think INEC should just focus on scaling up, basically. And then one more thing is to deal with the issue of, indiscipline within that sector. I mean, people should not just release documents to government officials because of maybe they have some links, to them, or maybe because of some level of, I don't know what it is now, and I don't want to, speculate, basically. So we need to do that, and then because of the general, because we've seen a case in this country where, certain returning officers announce the wrong person, as the winner of the election. And so it starts from, this level, somebody leaking information to some persons because of maybe one thing or the other that we cannot really pinpoint right now. So I think the chairman should focus on actually addressing that before the election. That if you do this, this is the result, this is the consequence. Because I think when we have, stipulated consequences, it keeps people in check. But when you don't know what you will face after doing something, you think it's just a normal thing. I mean, we'll talk about it and we'll forget about it. But consequences, can help people to live right, basically. That, when you do this, this is what you will face. And I think it's a fine place to leave that discussion and this morning.